Okay, welcome back. So we're looking at October-November 2019, question paper 12. So first thing is there's a lot of duplications between question paper 11. So what I'll do is I'll just go to those questions. I'll circle the correct answer and you can go to the question paper 11 video for those full explanations. Okay, so we'll start at the bottom. What can cause a rise in the deficit on the current account of the balance of payments? So remember here what we're looking for is a rise in the deficit. To put it very simply, we're looking for our imports to be bigger than our exports because that would cause an increase in the deficit. Remember, deficit is imports being bigger than exports. There is other components, but that's a simplification. And then a surplus is where our exports are bigger than our imports. So if our deficit is to rise or get bigger, then our imports must be getting bigger. Okay, so in this case, we know that there are other components which are the primary account and the secondary account. Okay, so let's have a look through these. So for D, a rise in the revenue earned from tourism in the country, that is incorrect because that would be money coming in, right? So if it's money coming in, that would decrease a deficit, not increase a deficit. So we're left with A, B and C. Now for C, a fall in the value of imported manufactured goods into the country. That's the value, that's not the total amount. So remember that the current account looks at the total. So if the value of the exports is going down, it may be possible that the total amount of imports actually increase, right? Whereas for B here, a fall in interest earned on overseas investment by the country, it's not going to affect the balance of trade and balance of services, but it will affect these components. And what that's going to do is it's going to reduce the amount of money coming in. Right, so in this case, if we have a fall in the interest earned on overseas investments, the amount of money that we have coming into the country will reduce, so that will result in a rise in the deficit. Just like here for A fall in foreign direct investment into the country, you might assume that that would result in a rise in the deficit, but that's not going to be accounted for in any of our current account balance of payments section. 28. What is a disadvantage of trade protection of manufactured goods? Remember, trade protection is designed in order to reduce the imports so that we can protect domestic industries. Okay, now for example, it reduces outflows of currencies to pay for imports. No, that's something that they're trying to achieve, right? So it will achieve that. That's therefore not a disadvantage because it is the aim of trade protection. increases demand for domestic manufactured products. Same thing as I've just said here. That is the aim of using trade protection. We want to increase the demand domestically. Encourages infant industries to grow. The same thing. That is another aim of the trade protection techniques. We want to encourage the infant industries in our own country to increase. But a disadvantage is that it can lead to trade or to retaliation from trading partners. So for example, if we put a tariff on a good, a tariff on, let's say, imports from America, right? Then what America may do is they may start to put these same tariffs on exports coming from China to America. So they'll retaliate based on the protectionism measures that we're imposing on them. So 24, what is most likely to increase as a country becomes more developed? So remember, more developed means that the country is becoming richer. Okay, so is it likely that the average size of a family will increase? No, the average size of a family is going to come down, because as the country gets richer, people start to focus on their jobs and their careers more, so they have less children. The infant mortality rate is also likely to come down, because as the country becomes more developed, we're likely to have less children dying as our healthcare system gets better. And the proportion of income spent on food will also come down. Remember, the proportion of income that we spend on food is linked to the level of income that we have. The poorer a country is, the higher the percentage of income they spend on food, which is a necessity. Whereas the more developed or richer a country is, the smaller the percentage of income that they'll spend on food. Whereas average household income, that is likely to go up, and that's kind of linked to point D as well, right? So as we start to get richer, our income will increase, and that will allow us to spend a smaller proportion of income on things like necessities and a larger percentage of income on luxury goods. Okay, question 23 is about hyperinflation, which is a dramatic increase in inflation. Therefore, we know that prices won't fluctuate. Prices are going to rise very rapidly. Okay, and now we need to look at the effects of that. So for C, the value of fixed assets remains stable. That's not going to happen, is it? Because inflation is going to change the prices of goods and services. So therefore, it's also going to have an effect on the value of fixed assets. But what will happen is that money has limited worth as a medium of exchange. So money becomes basically, it reduces the worth of money to use as something that we can exchange for goods and services. Because money is now worth 400% per annum, the money is now worth 400% less this year than it was last year, which means that when we're exchanging it for goods and services, money becomes less valuable due to the fact that it's worth so much less than it was before. During high periods of high unemployment, the highest unemployment rate is often the 16 to 19-year-old age group. Which statement explains why 16 to 19-year-olds may find it difficult to find a job? Okay, this is very simple. Well, first of all, their wages are lower than those of adults. That doesn't explain it. We're looking to explain why they can't get a job, not why, when they have a job, their wages are lower. The incentive to earn an income is lower. That's not true. 16 to 19-year-olds want to earn an income just as much as other age groups do. they prefer leisure activities to long working hours. Again, that's not true. If they get paid enough money, they're going to work long hours. The reason why they find it difficult to get a job is because they don't have the necessary skills yet, and they're lacking the work experience that they need. Question 21 is another HDI question. Why was it introduced as a measure of the standard of living? That is because education and healthcare are important contributors to the standard of living. Okay? So, remember that the HDI, when you look through the other papers, it includes the mortality rates and it includes the average years of schooling, which something like real GDP does not include, right? Therefore, it gives us a more accurate measure of the standard of living across different countries, because it doesn't just take into account income and output, it takes into account other factors that contribute to our standard of living in a country. So GDP per head only measures development. That's not why it was introduced. Inequality can only be measured by HDI. That's not true. Inequality can also be measured by something that's called the Gini coefficient. And literacy rates are not an effective measure. That's incorrect. Literacy rates are an effective measure of the standard of living, and that's why they are included through the level of education. Okay, which increase is most likely to cause a rise in the output? So which increase is likely to move real GDP right? Therefore, we can assume which one is likely to increase aggregate demand. Okay? Now, hyperinflation, definitely not. We just discussed that that is a huge increase in inflation, right? So it's a very negative thing for the economy. And if you think about it, if the prices of goods and services become so much more expensive, people can't afford them, then we're not going to have an increase in our output. If we increase income taxes, that is contractionary fiscal policy. And that will move our AD to the left, not to the right. If we increase our interest rates, that is contractionary monetary policy. And that will similarly move AD to the left. Whereas if we increase investment is likely to move AD to the right, because remember that investment is a component of AD. So our AD is made up of, if we need to clarify again, consumer expenditure, investment, government spending, plus exports minus imports, which we refer to as our net exports. Okay, how would government spending on education be classified? So government spending, remember, is a fiscal policy. Because if we increase government expenditure or if we decrease our taxes, they're both expansionary fiscal policies. So it is a fiscal policy because it will influence AD and it will move AD to the right. It's not a monetary policy, and it is a supply side policy, because over time the spending on education, what's the effect of that? So we just talked about what the components of AD are down below, right? So it's going to increase this government spending component, which will move AD to the right. Okay, now that's going to be the short run effect, which means that will take place in a quick time period. But over a long period of time, spending on education may allow us to move our AS to the right as well as a supply side policy, because we may be able to increase the skills of the workers, give them more knowledge, which may allow us to become more productive in making our output. But that will take a long time to take effect. So fiscal and supply side. Remember, supply side is designed to move AS to the right. Fiscal is designed to influence AD. What combination of policy measures would be effective in reducing the effects of a recession? So remember, in order to fix a recession, we're looking for things that will move AD to the right. So, if we go through these, increase in interest rates, that's going to move AD left. It's contractionary monetary policy. Increase in income tax will do the same thing. That's contractionary fiscal policy. It will move AD left again. So they're wrong. We know we want to move it to the right. Increase in interest rates is the same thing. AD left. Reduction in income tax is AD right. It's expansionary fiscal. But we can't move it left and then right. That's not going to result in it moving to the right overall. We want to look for two reasons that are moving it both to the right. Increase in income tax here is the same as what we have down here. So that's also wrong. If we reduce the interest rates, that is expansionary monetary policy, and AD will move to the right. And a reduction in income tax is expansionary fiscal policy, so AD will also move to the right. '17. The government has an important role in mixed economies. What function would it not perform? Okay. So will it employ workers to collect taxes? Yes, they will, because they're going to need to collect tax revenue from income, right? Will they invest in transport infrastructure projects? Yes, they will. Think about what the government in China has done. They've invested in the Beijing Metro, for example, and the high-speed railways. And will they produce goods in public corporations? Yes, they will. So remember, one thing is that the government is going to have to produce public goods, like, for example, street lighting. Okay, something that we have a lot of in Beijing. They'll produce that because the private firms are not going to make these public goods because they can't make a profit from them. But what they won't do is they won't distribute profits or dividends from profits of state-owned enterprises. The state-owned enterprises are set up to benefit the members of society. So therefore, they're not going to give the profits back to the shareholders, right? The shareholders is themselves anyway. Question 16. Why are indirect taxes such as VAT described as regressive when comparing to high income and low income purchase? So remember, a regressive tax, what does it equal? It equals the higher the income you earn, the lower the percentage of tax you pay. An opposite effect for a lower earner. The lower the income you earn, the higher the percentage of tax you pay. Right? So high income earners pay a higher percentage of their tax. That's not regressive. That is progressive tax, which is the opposite of regressive. Low income purchasers and high income purchasers pay the same percentage of their income in tax. That's another type, which is a proportional tax. It's not regressive or progressive. Low income purchasers pay a lower percentage. Again, that is describing a progressive tax, which is the opposite of regressive. So for regressive, we can see high income earners, higher the income you earn, the lower the percentage of tax that you pay. Okay, 13. Which combination of characteristics correctly describe a monopoly? Okay, so remember, a monopoly, what is it? It's one firm, essentially, that controls the industry. Okay, therefore the barriers of entry, they are what stops or allows a firm to enter an industry. So if the barriers to entry are high, that would describe a monopoly, because we know that we only have one firm, so it must be difficult to enter the industry. And if there's a monopoly, because they're only one firm, it is still possible for them to achieve economies of scale, right? Now, if you forget what economies of scale is where, as the firm gets bigger, their average costs can come down or can reduce, right? So a monopoly still can achieve economies of scale even if they are the only producer. What type of business corporation is necessarily in the public sector, so under government control? A sole trader is not. A sole trader is private, so the government has nothing to do with them. A public limited company, remember, is also private. They sell their shares on the stock exchange to raise capital. And a multinational company will also be private. Whereas a public corporation, they are under the control of the government, which makes them in the public sector. Now remember, there was kind of a hint in one of the other questions down here. Producing goods in public corporations was a role of the government, right? Okay, 9. What is normally not a function of a central bank? So the central bank does act as a lender of last resort. They act as a lender of last resort to the commercial bank. In the event of a liquidity crisis. So if the commercial bank doesn't have enough money to pay back their consumers, then the central bank will step in and help them to do so. They do also issue notes and coins, because what they do is they operate or they control the money supply, and that's exactly what that is, right? And they do operate the government's monetary policy, because they are the people who set the rate of interest, and then they ask the commercial bank to follow that rate of interest. But what they don't do is they don't set the government's budget. The government themselves will do that. Okay, question 8. What is a disadvantage of being a specialist skilled worker? So career opportunities are definitely career opportunities are abundant. If you think about that, that is going to be an advantage, right? So how can it possibly be a disadvantage if you have a lot of career opportunities? Earnings are related to the level of skill. Again, that's an advantage because they're highly skilled, so they'll get high incomes. Labour supply is elastic and plentiful. Well, that would be incorrect. specialist skilled workers may be difficult to become that specialist skilled worker, so the labour supply may be inelastic. But a disadvantage is that because their skills are so uncommon, they may have to move to other areas to get their jobs, so it may be difficult for them to find work in their local area. 7 is a PED question. We just need to calculate the PED. We're told that the price of tickets goes up. First of all, let's put in our formula. It's percentage change in QD divided by the percentage change in price. So between 6 and 9, we're told demand goes down by 2%. So that's minus 2 over plus 10. That will give us an elasticity of minus 0.2. After 9, ticket prices go down by 5 and there's 7% increase in demand. So that's plus 7 divided by minus 5, which will have an elasticity of minus 1.4. Okay, so we can see, remember, elastic is bigger than 1.00, so it would be elastic after 9 AM, and inelastic is less than 1.00, so it would be inelastic between 6 and 9. So C would be our answer there. Okay, factors that can change supply curve is for 6. So an increase in demand for the product does not shift the supply curve to the right. Increase in government subsidies, that will. Increase in government subsidies reduce the cost of production. It incentivizes them to supply more, so supply shifts to the right. An increase in indirect taxes on the product will shift the supply curve to the left, not to the right. And an increase in the cost of production will do the same thing. The supply curve will shift to the left, not to the right. Okay, what suggests there's market failure? So, you need to revise on your ideas behind market failure, but high producer profits does not suggest there's market failure, because they may have high profits. That's perfectly okay. High retail prices, same thing, does not suggest that there is does not suggest that there's market failure. Low levels of investment similarly also doesn't. It's possible to have low levels of investment, high producer profits and high retail prices without the market failing. But if we have a lack of competition, that tells us that there is the existence of a monopoly, and that would be a form of market failure. Because what we know about the free market is that it should generate more competition. Okay, question 2. So we're at X and we're moving to Y. What statement about that movement is correct? Demand for consumer goods has risen. We can't determine that from a PPC. PPC just shows our output. The opportunity cost for producing consumer goods has risen. Again, not true. What we can see is that we can now produce more consumer goods because we've shifted to the right, but we're making the same amount of capital goods. If we're producing more consumer goods, and that means that our opportunity cost for consumer goods must have come down because we can now make more of them. So what we'd have to give up when we're choosing to make capital goods is less consumer goods than we would have before. There's been an increase in productivity. That's going to be the correct answer. So remember, anything that shifts it to the right is an increase in quantity and or quality of resources. and there's been an inward shift, we can see that's wrong. There's been an outward shift. So last one, what statement about factors of production is correct? So labour is not the output made by employee, labour is the employees themselves. Land includes commercially grown rice crops. No, it doesn't. Land includes the extraction and collection of natural resources. And capital is the amount of money borrowed from a bank. It is not. Capital is nothing to do with money. It's the equipment and machinery that we use to increase our productive capabilities. The correct one is that profit is the reward for enterprise. So as a reward for being entrepreneurial, they get rewarded through profit.